We are talking about the movie One Remains. This one is directed by Josh Hopkins and stars Vanessa, Leigh. So this is a bit of a strange horror film, really, because to tell you too much about it would be to ultimately to spoil the surprise with this one. But suffice it to say, it focuses on a group of 6 young documentary filmmakers as they are going up to a remote sort of lodge in the woods somewhere where a number of years previous there had been reported to be some type of massacre, some type of mass death, and there's surrounded in mystery. People don't really know what's going on, and these guys will have to kind of do a documentary on it. Now, the owners of this lodge are this kind of older gentleman, his kind of middle-aged son, and then the younger grandson. And these documentary filmmakers want to interview them, try and find out what's going on, and then as the movie progresses, they learn a little bit more about it, and you'll kind of get maybe a sense of what has happened to the previous people who are victims, and maybe what will happen to these guys as well. So let's discuss, first of all, what works with One Remains. So I would say this movie will defy your expectations, especially if you don't really know what's going to happen, because you don't really know where it's going to go. Is it a slasher? Is it some type of kind of mass hysteria or kind of madness? Is it kind of something kind of supernatural? All of these things are potentially the right answer, but maybe they're wrong as well. So it will kind of defy your expectations, and that becomes somewhat original in a concept, because what actually transpires is probably not what you're going to think, although it's put a pin in that because we are going to cycle back to that. The movie does do a good job, I feel, of fleshing out some of its characters. These kind of 6 documentary filmmakers are, I feel, somewhat overly fleshed out to a certain degree, because the movie doesn't really kind of get into any real horror elements until a good hour into it. But nonetheless, because of that, we do get kind of quite drawn out characters, and kind of we get an idea of a sense of who each of these kind of individuals are. Led by Molly, who is the kind of the leader of the group, and I've seen a lot of people sort of championing the fact that our main character is gay, but there is a kind of an extended lesbian sex scene as well. So you know, there's that. The gore effects are moderate, I would say. I think the what you could say is the idea of what is being done is maybe better than the execution, because it does, some things feel particularly kind of, oh, that looks kind of painful, but the execution of ultimately of the actual practical gore effects is relatively kind of weak. The issues of this film are the pacing, for one, I feel is rather slow. As I've mentioned, you don't really see anything horror-wise really into an hour into the movie. And here's where I feel the main problem is going to be. When we do find out, or we do sort of start seeing stuff, we don't really know what's going on. As I've mentioned, the movie does try to have a kind of rug-pulling moment where you think something's going to happen, and maybe it will happen slightly differently, and that is the case. But it doesn't really give you any explanation as to why. The first time you kind of really see anything untoward is when they are watching a particular videotape. But what they see on the videotape doesn't really make any sense, and is not explained at all. Now, you could argue that it's mass hysteria, or kind of some type of madness, but everyone is seeing the same thing without kind of giving anything away. So it that doesn't kind of like figure. So you're thinking maybe it's kind of something supernatural. Again, it's not explained. Or is there some type of mortal force here that seems to be at work here? And that may well be the case, but we still don't really know the motivations for it. So what actually is happening here is very ambiguous. It's either by design, which I don't think it is, or it just kind of like, it isn't well thought out, and ultimately then becomes frustrating. I think that maybe the filmmakers had an idea of where they wanted to go with this, but the execution of it, I feel, is very lacking. The acting as well, not by all the cast, I feel our central protagonist is relatively well acted, but there are some of the other performances what I feel are a little lacking in places, certainly with some of the smaller parts here. The acting isn't quite as good. And although some of the characters I feel do get, you know who they are personality-wise, you get a sense of that. Some of the characters here are just OTT. We have one of our male documentary filmmakers who just seems so much of a dislikable character. He almost seems cartoonish, and why would anyone work with this guy? It would be beyond me. It just seems to be, someone acting in a professional capacity. I just don't think would act like this, or at least to the degree that it's depicted on screen here. So it becomes a little bit of an oddity, this movie. I think there is a good idea here, and I feel that it's somewhat is an interesting movie to watch once you kind of see what's happening, but the execution of the narrative is so poor that it becomes a frustrating movie, and you do wish there was a little bit more kind of going on in this sort of like this, maybe the second act a little bit more, because it just drags a little bit too long. So I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.